Daily Rambam for Friday, out of Shabbos Kodesh, Yutes Chashon Tavshin Pei Aleph, 12th Perek Shnei Maser of Hilchos Shabbos. So we have arrived at the final Perek of the series in which the Rambam elaborates regarding all 39 malachas, and now we're up to the last couple that are still left. We have Mav'ir, Mechabe, and Hamitzi Mirishus L'Rishus. And then once the Rambam gets started with that, then from Perek Gimel to Perek Yutes, it's all going to be about Inyanim relating to Haitzah, because there's a lot to say on that topic, and that's in addition to Hilchos Erevin, which comes after Hilchos Shabbos. So we start with Malachas Mav'ir, and the Rambam says, Hamav'ir kol shehu chayav. You ignite, you burn something, just the slightest amount. The shear is a kol shehu, and you're chayav. Ushi etzarech le'efer, but it has to be constructive. You need the ashes as a result of the fire. But if you're just being destructive, then you're potter. Because we know in Hilchos Shabbos, mekalkel, that's not a malacha. But if you light your friend's stuff on fire, his house, his grain, then you're chayav. Even though you're still being very destructive, because you're taking revenge from your enemy, and as a result of carrying out your plan, you feel a little better about yourself. So this is like the law we already mentioned, that if you do kriya, you tear your clothing because of avelos, or because you're angry, you're chayav, or like hitting your friend, injuring your friend during a fight. It all makes all these what these three have in common is that your Yetzer Hara feels better, so you're metaken for the purposes of your Yetzer Hara.
What's the Isser?
What's the
Isser in Miskara Daiter? So I'm saying so.
So it's constructive. It's a constructive act. It's not a destructive act. You accomplished something.
So I'm saying
you came home and you said you accomplished something. Yeah. The Rabbi, I believe here, there's a Sagos Rabbi that says it's all hevel or usruach or something like that, but that's what the Rambam says. So we said in the beginning, dafka for ashes. Now the Rambam says there are other constructive reasons besides getting revenge against your friend. If you light a candle or wood, bein l'schamim, bein l'har, whether for heat or for light, it's also constructive, it's also mavir. And if you heat up metal in order to smith, you put it in the water, so you heat it up in advance. That's already the told of mavir, and you're also chayiv. So the Maggid Mishnah says, the Rabbi here, one of the Rabbi's comments here is that the Rabbi adds, what if you lit a fire under your pot? So then the Rabbi says you should be chayiv too, both for mavir, for the fire, and for mevashel, for the. So the Bible says the F Shishakenu could be. I'm not ruling it out. And I'm already said in Perek test that if you put wood under a kedera, you're chayav from a vashel. It says, however, pay attention. The shear here is kol shehu. The shear for cooking we know is always a gregeres. Back there it's gregeres mi beitza kala. It's an egg, but the gregeres from an egg. So in that case, you're not automatically chayav. Even if it's true that you're chayav for both, but you're not automatically chayav for both. The mavir is kosher and mevashel is krigegeres mi beitza kala. Now, when it comes to the metal, amachamim esabar is the last halacha here. The Rabbi also comments and says, "Why is that mavir? It's mevashel. You're sort of boiling the metal." And also he says, if you put it in the water, that wouldn't be mechabe. That would be makabe patish. That's the final step with the metal. The last step is you put it in the water, and that solidifies it.
Is you need the offer. The because you hold.
We just said at the end. First, the Rambam says the classic case is that you're tzarech le'efer. Then the Rambam at the end says also for heat, also for light, but you're not actually getting anything out of the object itself. You're getting sort of more of an indirect benefit. Whereas here, you took something and you turned it into something else. You turned it into efer.
That's not a question. Isn't just lighting a fire without any.
So I'm gonna get to that in a second. There's actually a whole sikh about it, which I was going to share in a moment. Yes, there is a sikh about it. I just wanted to go quickly through this Magen Mishnah with the Ravid. Okay, I'm not going to get into there's all Shakavatar you have by Yom Kippur. It says that they used to heat up these metal things and drop it into the water for the Kohen Gadol if he's an istinus, if he can't deal with the cold water. So we're able to heat it up for him. And then the Gemara says, isn't it Mitzarev? Aren't you doing Mitzarev? And the Gemara says two answers. One answer is that it didn't reach the stage where it's up to Tziruf. It didn't get hot enough that putting it in the water would be considered putting the finishing touches on Tziruf. And the other answer is that it's Tziruf B'alma D'Rabbanon, it's a Shavuos, and Shavuos B'Mikdash. So that has big, depending on how you understand this Gemara, has ramifications for, Barzel B'chlal, how you're going to understand it according to the Ram, according to the Ravid. But we'll leave it at that. Now, there's a whole sikha from the Rabbi, and the sikha is Chelek Lamed Vav, Vayakel. I believe it's the last likut that came out on Tafshin and Beis, Vayakel Tafshin and Beis. A whole shtickle on this halach and the Rambam. The Rebbe starts by quoting the Rambam, and the Rebbe says, it's Yedua, the Alter Rebbe has a famous shita in explaining the Rambam, that according to the Alter Rebbe, the real inyan of Mavir is actually just creating the fire, the fact the fire is created, the fact the fire is spreading. And the Alter Rebbe says, even though the Rambam said so you have to be tzarech le'efer, but still the ikar chiv is not because you're consuming wood and the wood is being consumed and being no, it's the ribuy ha'esh, and the Alter Rebbe proves it from the Rambam at the end with the barzel. And he quotes the Magen Mishnah. When the Magen Mishnah answered the Ravid, he said that according to the Rambam, anything that becomes so hot, it's the hot metal is almost fiery in its own right. It's like a fiery piece of metal. So you can't call that a vashel. The Magen Mishnah said to the Ravid, you call that mavir because look what you did to this metal here. So now you heat metal, literally nothing is being consumed. There's nothing being mela when you light a candle. So the candle's burning. You didn't need the if according to the Rambam you're heating metal, nothing at all was lost here. The metal stayed the same before and after. So you see that it's not required to be over a maver as long as you create some kind of fiery object. You see from the Rambam continues and says, even if you don't do the afer, so it also suggests that the main thing is the fire, not the afer. So the Ragashar brings another ayah that the shear is kosher when it comes to the whole chakira of is the every malacha, is it the action or is it the outcome? So usually the way you can determine it is that if there's a significant shear, then it's the outcome. So if you accomplish this much, then you accomplish the outcome. But if the shear is kosher, then it seems like it's the action. As long as you did the action, even a little bit, you're already chayiv. So the fact that mavir is kosher, so if it was a davar had nidlok, if it was about burning things, you'd have to say, this is an object that got burnt, it's got to be something. So then the Rebbe asked Rebbe Zoy, why is the Rambam out of order? Why did the Rambam start with tzarech le'efer and then go on to the other things? It should be the other way around. And the Rebbe suggests an answer because tzarech le'efer is in contrast with mekalkal. The Rambam wanted to bring out the nice contrast of how tzarech le'efer is the most constructive kind of burning where you're literally creating something that you need. And in contrast to that, mekalkal is pater. And then there's other variations. But still, the Rebbe says if the main chiyuv was ribuy ha'esh, you have to start with the main thing, the real thing, the lighting a fire for nothing, just for the fire itself. So then the Rebbe really goes off into an explanation of Pipnimis or Inyanim. The Rebbe says, we know Lamatas Malachos are also on Shabbos. So, Lamatas Malachos are bad. But no, the Lamatas Malachos come from the Mishkan. That's where we learn them from. The Mishkan's good. Mishkan is making a mikdash, making a mikdash, dirim tachtainim. That's a good thing. So what's the story? What's the Lamatas Malachos? So Lamatas Malachos is the Avodas Hashem of the weekday. And that's the kind of Avodas Hashem you shouldn't be doing on Shabbos. On Shabbos, we deal with Hecher Zach, we don't deal with this type of Avodah. But everything that has to do with Lamatas Malachos is actually teaching us something on Avodas Hashem. So when you learn Mavir, the question is, what is the derech of Mavir and Avodas Hashem? So he says, Mavir and Avodas Hashem is, Ner Hashem Nishmas Adam, we all have a flame inside, and we're trying to awaken the flame. So the Rambam is saying that it's not just about awakening the flame, and where does that go? It goes nowhere? No, it has to tzarech le'efer. It has to be an outcome. It has to be something in Gashmias. The most Gashmistic part of the object is the efer. That's the only part that's left. Everything else disappears. Then you have that core Gashmias that's still there. That's the efer. So what you're trying to do is you're trying to deal with the world. You're trying to turn the world into efer in a positive sense. Yeah, so that's more or less how the Rebbe explains it in that sikha. So it starts off with the nigla and it goes off into this. And the way the Rebbe says it at the end is, the higher you go, you feel even more the hechrich dafke to go back later in lamata and deal with oilam. It's not like it's two different things. One is tied to the other. Hamadlik is tzarech la'efri. You have the two together. Anyways, that's what the Rebbe says about halacha aleph. Moving on to halacha beis mechabe. So abachabe kol shu chayev. Also the flip side, you extinguish even a little bit. You're chayev. Echad mechabe saner, echad mechabe sagachel shaleitz, both for a candle or for a wooden coal. Aval mechabe gachel shamateches potter. But if it's a metal coal, then you're potter. Miskaven the tzarev chayev. But if you're putting it out as part of the process, you're melting it and then you put it out. Shekain leichi abarzelis. That's what the blacksmiths do. Mechimenes abarzelat sheyoseg acheles. You heat the metal up until it's glowing, and then you extinguish it with water. That's what strengthens it. When we say letzaref, that's the act we just described. And that's told of mechaber. That was what the Rabbi was also disagreeing with. He said it's makabah patish. And it comes to metal, you are allowed to extinguish it in Reshus Harabim, so it doesn't harm others. If you recall, in Perek Aleph, we learned about a malacha shein tzarech legufa. The Rambam gave a few examples. For example, you extinguish you extinguish a candle because you need the oil, or you don't want something to burn. So technically, you don't need the extinguishing. It's something you need the side outcome of the extinguishing. But you're still chayev because it's malacha shein tzarech legufa chayev. Another example that Rambam gives is if machabes hagacheles b'reshus harabim, you put out the gacheles. You don't care whether the gacheles is on fire or not. You just don't want people to get hurt. You're still chayev. But that was talking about a regular gacheles. Here, the Rambam is saying gacheles shematachas, not quite the same.
More dangerous.
No, it's not. But also clearly, it's not the same level of eish fully. So in this case, you could put it up. If you put oil into a candle, a lamp that's already lit, so that's increasing the fire. That's maver. And if you take some of the oil out, you're chayav from mechaber. Of course, earlier in Perek Hey, we learned about all kinds of halachas where we're afraid if you got too close to the fire, shemayata, you're going to tilt the oil towards the fire, that's maver, or shemayastapek, mechaber. Now move on to halacha gimel, which deals with a fire that breaks out on Shabbos. Those halachas. Halacha gimel, deleka shenafla b'Shabbos, a fire breaks out on Shabbos. And if you put it out simply because the money, you're afraid the money will, your property will be destroyed, chayav. You did the malacha. Losing money is no excuse to ignore Shabbos. Ella ibn nefashos, only if lives are at stake. So if a fire breaks out, this is what you do. Everyone has to leave the house so they don't die. That's important. They should let the fire keep burning. And even if it burns everything down, that's what the Rambam says. Yeah, very, very strict. The Maggid Mishnah says, of course, what the Rambam is implying is that if there was ibn nefashos, and the only way to save lives were to be through kiboy, then of course you could put out the dleika because nothing stands with the koach nefesh. And it's actually before the Gemara that says that could you put out a fire on Yom Tov? And where it says if the sakanas nefashos even on Shabbos. The question is if it's only mamain, is Yom Tov different than Shabbos? So you see clear in the Gemara. Now if you look in Shulchan Aruch Siman Shin Lamed Daled, which deals with these halachas. So at the end of the whole siman, Sif Chavav, the Ramah says, all these halachas, which is based on this and more, all of these halachas, that was only in the olden days. Well, that's probably the censor. Now that we're among the Gentiles, because there are goyim around, so there's danger here. And the faster you go, the better. Don't hesitate. So I'm going to quote soon from the Alter Rebbe, who will elaborate a little more. There's some interesting history and background here. But it's still a fiyah. If you know for sure there's no sakana, you cannot see how any scenario which is ulita sakana, then you're still aser. But if there's a shash sakana, you're still allowed to. Even if the fire is in the guy's house, you should run and put it out in the guy's house to make sure that everyone's okay. And he says, by the way, this is all again, even for being matir, this is just lachabes hadleika, which by the way is a malacha sheina tzuricha lagufa. There's room to be mekalir because you don't actually need the afer. You just don't want things to burn. That's not the real act of kiboy. So because it's sheina tzuricha lagufa and this is sakana, so that's what putting out the fire is okay. But you can't just be machal Shabbos to start taking things out of your house if it's not afer and hamutter. And here, interestingly, here in this if the Rambam says, and if you went to Ramachal Shabbos, and apparently this is a very common scenario where people can't control themselves, and the Ramachal Shabbos, so he gives a whole tikkun shuvah here in Shulchan Aruch. You have to fast 40 days, Monday and Thursday. You can't drink wine and you can't eat meat. And instead of a korban chatos, you have to give 18 pshitim, 18 coins to tzedakah. And if you want to pay in exchange for the tainus, then you have to give 12 pshitim in exchange for each day that you were supposed to fast. And he's mitzayin to Yeridea, Hilchos Nida, where there's also tikkun shuvah and Shulchan Aruch for someone who was nichshel in something there. Now, if you look at the Alter Rebbe, Shulchan Aruch, Alter Rebbe elaborates a little more. He says, Yeshayimrim, and it's this, that it was only b'yameim, shlo yishrim ben anachrim. What do you mean? The Chacham also were shrim ben anachrim. The Gemara is written in Galus, Mishnayos even. They didn't have their own area, not quite, but they apparently whatever issue we have now, they didn't have them somehow. But Bisman is there, this is the kind of nefashis. Why? What? Here the Alter Rebbe explains. They come looting. Here's where looting comes in halacha. I say, you're going to stand and try to stop them. What happens when you try to stop the looters? Doesn't end so well. You have very lot of guys say they try to kill you. So fire leads to looting. Looting leads to self-defense. Self-defense leads to murder. So that's why you're allowed to put the fire out to avoid that. And even if the dleikas in the guy's house, what if the fire spreads? And again, that they're going to come and start looting is the same concern. So you can go and put it out in the guy's house.
We're concerned about the guy's house being looted.
No, we're concerned that the fire will spread to you.
Their house.
Yeah, so the looting will ultimately come around to you. Don't think you'll be spared, so you can go and just put it out immediately. Again, only if you think there's a sakana. And again, only if it's kiboy, but you can't just save your moment. And also he goes into the whole tikkun shuvah, now to adds more details. He says, this is all Machal Shabbos, and the Alter Rebbe adds, the whole tikkun shuvah is only if you're Machal Shabbos for money. But if you put out the fire where there's a chash sakana, and then you say, I still want to be machmer, I feel guilty that I put out a fire on Shabbos, we don't let you do tshuva, because if we allow you to do tshuva, the next time you'll say, well, clearly I did tshuva last time, I probably shouldn't be putting out the fire. We really want you to put out this fire, so no tshuva for you. Now, there's really an interesting historical thing here. There's a professor, his name is Simcha Emanuel, he wrote a whole article about the concerns regarding fire in the literature of halacha in the Middle Ages. You see, there's a lot of anxiety relating to fire. He says the issue with Shabbos already starts from the 1100s. The Ravan and Maganza already wrote that there's this whole issue with the fires, and the Erzuru 100 years after him, and the Maril in the 1400s, and there's even stories. He brings actual historical incidents that were documented where Jews ended up being killed as a result of a fire that broke out in Vienna in the 1400s or something. And there's also a related topic. It says in Choshen Mishpat, there's a halacha that if someone threatens a fire, he's considered a reidif. Why you consider a reidif if you threaten a fire? For this reason, because the fire leads to all kinds of terrible societal consequences. It was the whole issue surrounding the fire. So that way, if you even threatened, you said, I'm going to burn your house down, that was considered very, very problematic. Now, this is all still mitzad the goyim. All these makar I'm talking about are concerned regarding the goyim. However, Bisman Hazeh, a lot of poskim wrote that in any fire, if you allow the fire to spread, it's pretty much guaranteed that someone will end up in a sakana. Even if your apartment is empty, who knows what electricity, electrical appliances, things can blow up, explode, can spread. Even if they say even if the house, even if you know the fire won't burn anything down, even if the house will be filled with smoke and it will be dangerous, the smoke inhalation will be dangerous for people. Even that could be sufficient basis to put it out. Of course, if you have other ways, or as we're about to learn, if you can put things around it to prevent the fire from spreading, if there are other ways to deal with it, you should do those things first. But if not, there's a lot of, even though the way that Rambam made it sound like everyone just file out and watch everything burn, that's not what the price can say today.
You're allowed to pour water around it.
Yeah, so that's the Rambam is getting to now.
The thing is, Seems like it's pretty ungenommen that when there's a fire going on in the house, you may not do anything.
No.
I've watched it by a lot of people, and they said it's also.
I guess they assumed that the fire wasn't really going to burn their whole house down.
Did you burn the house
They
down?
would.
Did you burn the house down?
They weren't going to wait to find out. I'm saying, but it didn't. But it could have.
No, and then what's going to happen? Someone's going to have to call the fire department, and so you're going to have to make a phone call and down the road, and then do other malachas. And
I don't know how that Rebbe passing. I've seen people that are very chomer on this, and they won't touch it.
But this is what I saw in the
Your
Mekayim.
house starts burning. The guy next door, his house burned because of you. It's a big Hilchos
I've
Hashem.
been one Shabbos.
Hilchos Shabbos, it's also psychology.
Yeah.
You go from house to house,
Yeah.
the kids sleeping or whatever.
I've been one Shabbos by a big Yerushalayim, a big Talmid Chacham, and one of the candles fell down, and it was getting to the Tishlach, and he
Because it wasn't.
says-
They put water.
Must have estimated that it didn't look like it was going to spread. Okay, moving on. We have to move on though. So halacha daled, the idea of surrounding the fire. You're allowed to make a mechitza, try to block the fire with anything you have. Bein malei and bein ekanim, whether they're full or empty, to prevent the fire from passing.
Can you put water around it?
Afilu klei cheres chadashim malei mayim. Even if you have brand new earthenware full of water, mechitza, you can use that. But even though what's going to happen is the fire is going to reach the earthenware is going to pop, it's going to explode, and then the water is going to splash, and the fire is going to go out. So it seems like a sure thing. Shagram kibui mutter. You're allowed to cause kibui to happen indirectly. And you're allowed to put a bowl over the fire so that it doesn't catch.
You're putting out the fire.
Right.
You're suffocating it.
Right. Not clear that if you mamish means
I
to.
understand. Putting, but
Right.
You don't have to choke it.
Yeah,
You are
not
choking it.
necessarily
You're
making
choking.
What are you doing?
You're just doing that. You're controlling it, that it doesn't go to the sides. But it's not necessarily.
You can't choke it.
Right.
You're choking, you're putting it out.
Not fully clear. It seems like from the other halachas we're going to see that has to be if yes, yes, if not, not, as opposed to something that's a guaranteed thing. So Muzman Zagan or whatever the Rambam is describing, it was not assumed that it was going to instantly put it out. Halacha hey, teva shida migdal shachas ben or different pieces of furniture.
This is allowed. That you're allowed to put water around something in order that when it teaches the water, it's going to put out the fire.
Right.
Why isn't it mutter to get the fire department?
That's actually doesn't sound like you can put water directly around it. It sounds more like you can put klicheres with water that will then break.
Same thing.
No, but why can't you call the fire department?
Because you're not doing it by calling fire department as a malach. It's a different thing.
Not next block, the guy will call, whatever.
The guy
Oh,
comes
right,
on
Mom.
Halacha hey, teva shida migdal shachas ben or different pieces of furniture that caught fire. Maybe or gediv chayetziba. You can bring the skin of a deer, of a goat. And other things, and anything else that fire doesn't really catch so well. Well, first say if you can spread it over the part of the furniture that didn't catch fire yet, to prevent the fire from spreading to there. Or you have a talis, doesn't necessarily mean, as we've said, not just the talis we wear today, but what they wore, the clothing they used to wear. If it catches fire, you can spread it out and cover yourself in it, which apparently seems to lead to putting it out. And if it goes out, it goes out. At least you didn't do it directly. If a sefer Torah catches fire, you spread it out and you're learning from it. And if that causes it to go out, so be it. Or you can put water on the side where the fire didn't catch it. And if it goes out, it goes out. Here it sounds like you could put. Here it sounds like you could put water. Right?
Water, but maybe this is only the secretary.
Maybe. If you left a candle that's lit on top of a board, you can shake the board and the candle falls off and cover. And if it goes out, it goes out. But if the fire was on it since before Shabbos, then it's muktzah. So shakava, even if the candle had already gone out before and it didn't catch fire, also the tautla, now it's muktzah. That's then you can't touch it. Now there's the Rabbi has a sug over here. But if it's muktzah, then you can't. You can't touch the tavla. Tavla is muktzah basis. Yeah, that's what he's saying. So the Rabbi has a question. We learned the din that if you have a ner acheri hadelas, it's called psikreshe. If you're not careful with opening the door, the fire's for sure going to go out. So here you're picking up the tray and it's falling off. So, and the Maggid Mishnah also says, the oil is going to spill. And the second oil spills, you're Chai Mishum Mechaba. So even if the fire doesn't go out, you're Chai Mishum Mechaba, the second oil falls out. And that's Psikration. So, Yesh Mishated. So, first of all, he said, I already told you in Perek Alf, and not everyone holds that Psikration is always, you have to be Nena from the Malacha. If you're not Nena from the Malacha, then even Psikration, you're not Miskav and your mutter. That's not necessarily the Rambam. It says v'yesh mishatirates that we're not talking about oil. We're talking about a wax candle. So if the wax candle falls on the floor, it's not guaranteed to go out, and no oil is going to come out. So there's no mechabe. That's what we're talking about. Dafka, a wax candle. Now, what about a guy or a child that comes? If the guy comes to put it out, we don't tell him put it out. We don't tell him don't put it out. We were not responsible for him and Shabbos. If a child comes and says, I'll put it out, in shame, we don't listen to him. That's if he's basically carrying out his father's wishes. But if the child is acting on his own, ain't based in mitzvah of la frisha. This is a din in ketanim that no one's responsible to make sure this kid is observing Torah mitzvahs. That's a whole sugya subject for itself. But when it comes to fire, it's mutter to say to the goyim, to say sort of out to no one in particular. If anyone puts it out, you won't lose out. I promise. You'll take care of you. So that also you can sort of hint in that kind of way to a non-Jew to put out the fire. Now we've arrived at the next portion of the Perek, which deals with carrying on Shabbos. Carrying from one rishus to another. That's one of the 39. Even though the 39 malachas, we got them all from Moshe Rabbeinu, right? We don't have the 39 malachas explicitly in the Torah, but we know we got it from Moshe. But still, for Hitzah, there is a pasuk. When it comes to the Mishkan, it said, when they had enough for the Mishkan, they said, every man and woman, don't do any more malacha to donate to the Mishkan. But you call it ha'amihavi and people stop bringing. Now, what are we talking about? We're talking about bringing stuff. And what does the pasuk call it? Al yasued malacha. So halamalta shahava malacha. So he's calling the act of bringing a malacha. So there you see it in the pasuk. And of course, we know Tosfos famously says in Masechah Shabbos that Hitzah is a malacha grua, that there's something funny about Hitzah. It needs a lot more support, and that's why there are psukim for it. There's two psukim for it. This is one of them. Additionally, there's no pasuk, but we know it's tradition. But carrying in the Rishus Harabim itself, from the beginning of 4 Amos to the end of 4 Amos, it's also like taking from one Rishus to another. But interesting how the Rambam defines that it's like Meitzim and Rishus Rishus.
Wow.
Within Daled Amos?
From the beginning of Daled Amos to the end, a full 4 Daled Amos, carrying Daled Amos, Rishus Harabim, is Kamaitzi made Rishus Rishus.
I mean, he covers the full 4.
Yeah. We're going to learn a little bit more about it further on as well. Now that Rambam says the shear and the exact ma'isa that you need to do a test. So first of all, you're not chayav if you do this until you take out a shear that's beneficial. And the Maggid Mishnah says we're going to learn that in Perek Yud Ches. Another 6 prakim, that's the Perek with all the shiurim. Each object has a different shear of what's the minimum. You could say this is a beneficial object that I'm carrying something that's worth something. And it has to be either from Rishus Yachid, Rishus Harabim, or Rishus Harabim, Rishus Yachid. And additionally, v'yaker m'rishus zu v'yaniach v'rishus shniya. You need to do an akira, lifting it up in this Rishus, and do a hanacha, putting it down in the second Rishus. Avalam akar v'leiniach. But if you picked it up in this Rishus, but when you got to the other Rishus, you never put it down. Or when you got to the second Rishus, you put it down, but you never really picked it up in the first Rishus. To make a shear, or it was less than the shear, then potter. Still, of course, potter is asr, but it's not the malach per se. And the same goes for carrying 4 Amos in the Rishus Harabim. It has to be a shear, and it has to be an akira on this end, and a hanacha on the other end. I move on to other forms of transporting objects with your hands. If you throw from one rishus to the other instead of carrying it on you, or instead of carrying it, walking, you just stretch your hand out from one rishus to the other. That's a tilda. And the same goes for throwing or extending your hand from 4 amas. Also the same thing. And if you throw in a funny way, not the normal way, then you're potter. Now the Kesef Mishnah is just interesting to note. The Kesef Mishnah quotes these hasagas from the Ramach. In addition to the Rabbi, there's also the Ramach. And the Ramach says, what about the whole halacha that if you extend from Rishus to Yachid to Rishus HaYachid with Rishus HaRabim Be'emtza, the din is that b'joyta achas, that if you're on the same side of the street, you're chayev, because that's what the Levium did in the Mishkan. They were meished from wagon to wagon with the space in the middle. Why isn't the Rambam talking about it? The Kesef Mishnah says, "V'ani omer shezem moira al miyat hashkachas b'divrei Rabbeinu." I see that the Ramach isn't learning the Rambam so well. Rabbeinu kasav chiluk zeh b'seif Perek Yud Gimel. Rambam gets it in the next Perek, and the Ramach already jumped the gun, so should have read it a little more carefully. Yeah. Now, what about if you don't fully do Haitzah? Let's say whichever rishus it is, one of these two to the other. So you only brought miktsas, only part of it, part of the object, potter. The whole object has to go from one to the other. And then he gives an even more interesting example. Let's say you have a box full of smaller objects. It's full of small grains of mustard. And you brought most of it out from one rishus to the other. So that means hundreds of the pieces of mustard essentially did go mirishus l'rishus. Just not the whole box. You're still potter. Until the whole box goes out, and anything like that. The box turns it into a single object. We look at it as a box, not as individual things in the box. Now we move on to different interesting parts of your body or things like that you might be doing. Whether your right hand, your left hand, or in your sort of in your lap, or you have your money in your money pouch. And there's like a sheet, the way they used to carry the money in those days, chayav. It doesn't matter really how you did it. That's the way of carrying. Carrying can be done in different ways, not always holding it in your right hand. So you're still chayav. And if you have something on your shoulder, I don't know how common it is today, but maybe it was more common in those times, in those places, you carry things on your shoulder, you're chayav. Even though you're 10 tvachim above the Shus HaRabim, where things might be different, because that's how the Bnei Kahas carried the kalim in the Mishkan, higher than 10. They also carried it on their shoulder. And we always look to the Mishkan as the model for all the malachas. Right, so that's where those other issues come in. But a person who's walking is a tall person. You have something on your shoulder. We don't require that you're dafka carrying it down there. Because we follow your feet. You're standing on the Shus HaRabim, however we explain it. And we should know that earlier in Perek Aleph, the Rambam also touched on a little bit of this, where the Rambam said that regarding the concept that if you didn't do exactly what you planned, so if you did more than you planned, then you're chayav. If you did less than you planned, then you're potter. So one of the examples that Rambam gives is you were carrying something on you and you thought it was going to be hanging from the back. You had something on a string and it's hanging over your back, and then it swings around to the front. So then you're chayav, even though you were in this gavan that should be on your back, but it's better if it's in your front. It's a better shmira. Now you see it. In the back, someone can maybe pickpocket you. But if it's the other way around, if it was in the front and it swung around to the back, then you're potter because it's not what you intended. And if it was in a sinar, like you mentioned over here, here you mentioned a sudden, but the idea that you have something wrapped and it's sort of hanging on your body, there the derech is that it swings around, so you're still chayav because when you put it on, that's the derech that it swings around. That was in Perek Aleph. Now, other modes of carrying it out that are considered a shinoi, but if it's on the top of your hand, befiv in your mouth, and what's it called, the crook of your arm, the ozna in your ear, beside it in your hair, you have a pocket, but the pocket is face down, or between your clothing, in the hem of your clothing, in your shoe, your sandal, potter. There's no object that's normally carried in that fashion.
In your pocket?
A pocket that's face down. Imagine the pocket of your pants, but upside down. Or never, any pocket. The Maggid Mishnah points out that when we said befiv, it's only shaloi derech achila. Only if it's in your mouth, you stuck a random object into your mouth. But then you are chayav. It's clear in the Gemara that you're chayav if you're chewing something and you're walking. So that's the darach chayitzah. That's how you eat things. Yeah, so, gone. Yeah,
You go on with.
right. So that's important to qualify. You can't. It's derech achila.
Yeah, you can't eat. Bubblegum,
But it goes in your mouth. That's the derech. It belongs in your mouth. No.
Not really.
True. Touche. Halacha. We're saying if it's something that's oichel, it belongs in your mouth, then you are chayiv. When we said befiv, it means just a random object. Like you don't carry objects in the street in your mouth. That's not how you transport things. Halacha yadal. What about on your head? Now we know in the Middle East sometimes people carry things on their head, bounce things on their head. Even now, I mean, if something's particular heavy, I guess. So Hamaitzi Masei al Reishay, the Rambam says, if it was very heavy, you can sack mole, a full sack, a table, migdal, a box, shelves, drawers. You put it on your head and you're holding it with your hand, you're balancing it like that. That's how you transport things. But nimtza kamitzi al kseifa, so that's like on your shoulder, on your hand. It's all part of the same type of carrying. But if you took a light object, beged, clothing, or sakin, a knife, a sefer, a book on your head, right? Who bounces a book on their head? It's a joke. You don't transport a book like that seriously. But you're not holding it with your hand. Maybe if it's if you're holding it with your hand, maybe it looks like that's for some reason you need to carry it that way. If you're just bouncing it on your head like that, then you're just it's not the normal way. Most people don't do that. There's an additional din, somewhat related, because it mentions the head. If you carry something for Amos in Rishus Harabim, even if you're holding it over your head, chayav, you're still chayav. And that also relates to the dinim of the Rishuyas. But regarding the thing on the head, so the Maggid Mishnah says that the Gemara actually says, Hamaitzi Matzah Reish B'Shabbos Potter. And Gemara says, what about Anshi Hutzel? Anshi Hutzel, they always carry things on their head. And Gemara said, but L'daita Meitzel Kol Adam, we're not going to be impressed, we're not changing things because of what Hutzel does. So that's what the Rambam is saying, Reiv Olam, don't do it. But he says, you see here that Rambam is mechalik, that it depends really on the context. If it's derech chaytza asa, if it's something that you would say, yeah, that's the way to carry something heavy, then that's not what the Gemara was talking about. And Ashitaka says that Anshi Hutzel used to balance jugs of water and wine on their head. And so that's what the Gemara was saying does not count as real hitzah. It's still asa. Now, what is mutter? So in Rishus Harabim, so Rambam says, when you stand in Rishus Harabim, you have a 4x4 area near you. That's your territory. That's your space. You're allowed to carry there. You can carry in that square. How do we measure 4 amas? With your arm, with your arm. But if he's very small, then we measure by average amas. We have, based on Torah Shabbat Peh, that when it says in the Torah, Shvu ish tachtav, when it said that you're not to really move around on Shabbos, it was also referring literally to where you're sitting in the Rishus Harabim. You can't carry outside the square, only in the square. Which is the space that a person will stretch his hands and his feet out. Only there may you carry. So the Rabbi first of all says this is only if that's your kvias, Shabbos sham, you're parked there for Shabbos, or you ended up outside the tchum for whatever reason. The Maggid Mishnah says, quotes the Rabbi, and he says, any situation you have 4 amas in Rishus Harabim, and that's Tais's opinion. And the whole idea of the makam at chak, that you only can do certain things carrying makam at chak, that's only for the halacha of carrying less than 4 amas at a time. That's going to be in Perek Chaf. Then it's only makam at chak. But otherwise, apparently, according to this, you can, don't feel guilty about moving something around within 4 amas. The Maggid Mishnah brings up the question of is it 4 amas in both directions, or is it just 4 amas, square amas in one direction? So there's different opinions. Sounds like from the Rambam that it's only in one direction, but there might be others who say otherwise. And the idea about the amma, where does this idea about your own amma come from? Gemara says, what about Oig Melech HaBashan? Where's his? You only give him 4 amas from us. He doesn't have anything. He probably fills more than that. So that's because of Oig. We say Oig gets his own 4 amas. But if you're smaller than average, then we go with the average, which is Shisha Tfachim. Okay, to finish off, halacha design. What if you have 2 people and their 4 amma spaces overlap? They can meet and have a picnic in the middle. But you still can't put it from your 4 amas into his 4 amas. You got to stick to yours. What if there's one, another one, and another one, and the middle guy is overlapping with the 2 on either side? He can interact with each one, they can interact with him. But the 2 outer ones, there's no tricks here. You can't expand your territory. So therefore, if you wanted to transport an object, you could hand it to your friend who's within 4 amas of you, and he can hand it to his friend who's within 4 amas of him, even 100 people. Even though ultimately it moves many miles, each one only moved within his own 4 amas. Since you have the square 4x4, if it's a true square, that means you also have a diagonal. The diagonal is actually more. It ends up being a little more than a quarter. It's 5 amas and 3/5 of an amma. So the Rambam says, in essence, that becomes the true definition of arba amas. So in order to be this chayav on Shabbos and a daled amas of Shusar Rabim, it really actually has to be 5 amas and 3/5 of an amma, because otherwise you're within your square. All those times you see those words, if it's really along the diagonal, 5 3/5, so we have a pocket mizeh, and if it's less than that, then it's not really arba amas on your putter. You test to sum up. You have 3 measurements here. If you picked up an object here in the Shusar, you put it down there. If it's less than 4 amas, it's literally mutter. You could do it. If it's more than 4 but less than 5 3/5, so you're not allowed to, but it's putter. If it's fully 5 amas and 3/5 of an amma, it is a chayav. Then you're actually chayav. Because it left your diagonal of your square.
Yeah.